you name it, they're not here. The gauntlet's down. Everything the old-timers warned us about is now unfolding, and we have the proof. I mean, tonight I can go over, and anybody can search this. We'll give you the manual code number if people would like it. The Army admits, this is not even classified, that they are training for national gun confiscation, and it gets better, re-education camps for political dissidents that don't accept the New World Order system. So this is now gone from people like George Norrie a decade ago talking about it, or myself talking about it a decade ago or more. It's now in our face, and now I've confirmed a trend all over the country. And, we can start anywhere you'd like, Mr. Wells, because there's so much here. But all over the country, they aren't just grabbing veterans. They're grabbing all sorts of people that criticize the government even mildly, but they're not going after big talk show hosts or big fish. They're going after the little fish to set the precedent. And in the county in Virginia, where the decorated Marine Corps Sergeant Brandon Robb, honorably discharged from multiple tours in combat, one of my listeners and Infowars.com visitors, we've now learned, he was evil enough with his brother and his sister, who shared a Facebook, to talk about the Private Federal Reserve and talk about false flag terror, and to quote heavy metal lyrics about sharpening the axe. So that was enough that they were going to try to involuntarily commit him. They had him in there for a little under a week, and then the Rutherford Institute went in and challenged it, and the judge said, yes, we're going to order him released. But the issue here is, talking to the head of the Rutherford Institute, who talked to local press, and they called up, freaked out, and said, now that we look into this, there are 20 or more people grabbed in the last month, many of them veterans, in that county for their speech and thrown in the mental institutions. That's what the Soviets did in Russia, what Mao did in China, what Hitler did, is they would throw people in mental institutions. Ernest Hemingway, the famous writer, said that he thought that he was being spied on with the FBI and his house being broken into. They grabbed him, said that was mental illness, gave him electroshock, and basically that later led to his death. And, of course, it was later declassified he was being spied on and his phone tapped and home broken into. So this has happened here before, but we've now confirmed nationwide, and that's the big breaking news here. There is a covert program. We've seen the national demonization, saying veterans are the number one terror threat, not Al-Qaeda. Veterans are evil. All veterans should have their guns taken. They're all bad. I mean, this is like saying because there's a low statistical probability that a school teacher might abuse one of the children, so let's just arrest all school teachers. Or because there might be a bad cop, let's just arrest all cops. I mean, this is absolutely authoritarian, and all over the nation. All over the nation, including one radio talk show host who mildly criticized the government that I talked to earlier in the week, and I saw the documents. They're being grabbed and involuntarily committed, so they're definitely rolling out from beta to a larger rollout of arrest, or not even arrest, more of just extrajudicial snatching. And then when Brandon Robb, this was confirmed by the head of the Rutherford Institute, Mr. Whitehead, when this Marine, they knew the court hearing was coming up in a few hours, he was probably going to be released. The head psychiatrist came in and said, you listen here, buddy boy, we're going to brainwash you and we're going to force drug you, and tried to get him to yell and scream and get upset so they could use that in court. But he was smart enough when they started antagonizing him even further. He's very freaked out to just keep his cool and, to not freak out. So this is very, very frightening that a purge of our military veterans is taking place, because the globalists that are taking over America, just like they've done Europe, they know that's one of the only groups that understands the Constitution and Bill of Rights and that is trained and willing to fight this globalist takeover that's happening. Fight it with their words, the info war, so the system wants a chilling effect.
Alex, I'm looking at InfoWars, and I'll tell you, there is so much stuff on here. It's enough to make you walk on the side of your head. I don't even know where to start with this. I mean, it really is. Like the Oath Keepers to place a billboard near the Army base to protest the article demonizing the Tea Party and this thing about Brandon. How is this possible? I mean, even back in the old days, anybody can say, Why does any civilization destroy itself? Look at the Russians. They had it all going on. The Germans had it all going on. Architecture and music, the arts, just name one. They were all into it, and their civilization slipped into chaos 50, 60 years ago, a little more maybe. I'm just wondering, what is the point? Why are they doing this? Are they doing it just because they can? I mean, are they just drunk and sick with power and it's just reached a perverse level? Or is there a plan for, first we get rid of the people, then maybe we'll call the aliens and have them terraplane the place so that we and our progeny can live in the land of plenty by ourselves with none of these pesky citizens? I mean, what is this? It sounds like the makings of any sort of science fiction novel you could come up with.
Well, after we go over all the martial law collapse preparations that are publicly now taking place, I'd like to get into the master plan where the globalists do want to take us with the rise of the machines, the end of mass labor, why the future doesn't need a large population, as the elite themselves have said. Bill Joy, the head of Sun Microsystems, he came out a decade ago and said he was at an elite meeting. He wrote this for Wired Magazine, where he met with 200-plus technology company owners. We're talking billionaires and people. And they had a debate. Do we kill everybody with a bioweapon or something, the majority of the population, or do we just let people watch TV and play games and have fun because the future doesn't need the mass of humanity anymore? And human life has always been cheap. But the elite are discussing what do they do. And they've made a decision since Bill Joy actually wrote that in the April issue of 2000, so that's 12 years ago, why the future doesn't need us. So I want to address that and go into the psychosis that brings in tyranny. But since you mentioned the Oath Keeper billboard campaign and the images of the billboard saying, follow your oath, don't fire on American citizens, one of the most high-powered colonels there at that Fort Leonard Wood base, who's writing policy reports for the Army War College, and this report got forwarded all the way to the Joint Chiefs and was distributed. In this report, they're preparing the Army to fight their new enemy, and they say it is the Tea Party. And the Army professors, who are just basically globalists, are selling the officer corps. I mean, you can go read this. This made national news. It's been in the Washington Times, Washington Post, LA Times. I mean, it made big news after we started reporting on it about 3 weeks ago, and then the Drudge Report picked it up, and then that forced it, drudgereport.com, forced it to go viral. And it sounds like the Twilight Zone. They predict a scenario. This is a looking at the threat theater. They predict the main threat, and they predict it will start somewhere like North Carolina. Is the Tea Party? Now get this. It actually says this. The Tea Party will link up with Al Qaeda and attack America. Can you imagine?
Oh, perfect.
Conservative libertarians linking up with Al Qaeda. I mean, that is the most ridiculous thing. Anyone who knows the Tea Party knows they're super ultra conservative on average, and a lot of them, say, let's glass parking lot the Middle East. I mean, that is ridiculous to say something like that. But they're teaching 20-year-old, 22-year-old ROTC college graduates, officer corps, West Point, this type of garbage. I mean, this is out of control. But this is what you would expect when your government has become occupied by a foreign banking cartel. They're trying to turn our military into collaborators. Just like the Vichy French, when the Nazis took over, France basically stood down. That's why Hitler could take France in 2 weeks. It was only the British that ran any type of defense until they got pushed back to the sea at Dunkirk. And most of the officer corps was already waiting for Hitler and had made a deal. They stood down. Anyone that goes along with this is like a Vichy French collaborator. I mean, we are actually facing this today.
Where do you see the propaganda that's keeping everyone docile? I mean, going back to what Henry Ford said about the monetary system, it being well that the people don't know about that, because he thought if they did know about our monetary and financial system, he thought there'd be a revolution before tomorrow morning. Do the people have the stomach for a revolution, and could it be a quiet one that could possibly get our way, or do you just see no way out of this one? We're just going to have to wait till the noise is over and come out and start cleaning up.
I do not want to have a violent revolution because I've studied history. And The globalists are always provocateuring, radicalizing groups, or outright staging events. Like Oklahoma City, it was clearly staged, and people look into that and research that. There's a film, A Noble Lie, that breaks it all down with the eyewitnesses, the police officers, the survivors in the building, about who really did it. They even name names. Strangely enough, it's some of the same people running Fast and Furious today, the false flag, shipping tens of thousands of guns and hand grenades into Mexico to blame the Second Amendment, and all that's now come out, even CBS News. But we are winning in the info war. Every poll, every statistic, every number shows it. The globalists denied that world government was being established and demonized people that warned of it, but now they're saying, oh, world government is being established. It's the answer to all your problems. So people are like, wait a minute, you're flipping the script here. You said this didn't exist, but now what all of the, quote, conspiracy theorists warned of is happening. We better choose a side, and we like to choose a Bill of Rights, Constitution, property rights, the family, prosperity, not tyranny. And so the system is basically panicking right now and wanting to start, and that's the big news here, a civil war. They want to push veterans into fighting back. They want to be able to get the police and military who are currently in to have a war with the American people. We need to engage in the info war and reach out to the police and military now. And I guess when we come back, since you asked the question and I was rude and digressed and didn't cover it, I'll break down from my perspective, but I want yours, John, of why societies, in fact, the more prosperous they are, why they become decadent, and almost always, from Rome to Russia to Nazi Germany to every major culture, ends up degenerating in every case. I mean, tyranny is the norm. Liberty is that rare jewel that must be guarded at all costs that Thomas Jefferson talked about. Thomas Jefferson said, even if you protect the jewel and are obsessed with the jewel and defend it with everything you've got, there are powerful people that want the engine of government to be able to control people who are power hungry, and they will come and loot the jewel. And so it's really that simple. There are control freaks, and I can start answering it now. There are control freaks who aren't successful because of their talents, who aren't successful because of their art, their literature, who people don't want to basically be around. Those are the types that seek to get into power and get control because they want to make you do what they say. They want to make you pay attention to them. That's what tyranny is.
Gotcha. Let's take a break real quick and come back with Alex Jones on the Friday night edition of Coast to Coast AM. We're talking with Alex Jones, the InfoWars man, Infowars.com. You go to that site and you'll find a lot of disturbing information that I think you would like to read it. You might not like to read it, but I think maybe you need to read it. It's, he stays on top of it, he's full immersion, he studies it, and it's interesting because, you know, it is said, it is written that if everybody likes you, you got a real problem. If you don't have any enemies, that's a real problem. That's sadder, really, than not having any friends, in a way, because it means you can't even say anything that makes anybody mad. You just can't do anything. You're just a nothing. So here's the thing. Last weekend, it was the two Franks. Yes, Frank Wuko and Frank Vernuccio. And by the time it's all over with, I got to add to Nazi, Zionist, liberal, and right-wing wacko, also CIA guy, and just a guy who the government has something on, so that's why I'm pushing this propaganda. Why do you not challenge them, Wells? Because I want to hear what they have to say. I don't want to get into a brawl with somebody and not hear what they have to say. I want to hear what they have to say, so that you hear what they have to say, and you make your own decisions. That works for you, doesn't it? Okay, very good. Thanks for everybody who became Coast Insiders. It's a wonderful service, and you may actually, of course, we love to have you with us live, but you can get a little sleep if you need to and catch your program the next day or anytime it suits you. Thanks very much, and be sure to visit coasttocoastam.com. I'll give you the rundown of what's on there, but I want to get back to Alex quickly. Coasttocoastam.com is a must-view and read site, so bear that in mind, and we shall return with Alex Jones in just a moment. This is the one, the only Coast to Coast AM. Alex Jones, before we get into civilizational collapse, let me just ask you something here. How do you, well, I was just reminiscing about you and me back in the old days when we worked for the CIA, running all those drugs down